Welcome to episode 10 of Coming Home, Qowl, a Voice. I am your host, Craig Winn. Well, now that we are beginning to have a better understanding of the role that David, plays in communicating Yah's message and fulfilling his father's promises, it's time we consider one of the most uplifting of all Psalms. It is something that we considered briefly at the conclusion of our ninth episode of Coming Home. It is the 103rd Mizmor, and it opens with a, a revealing thought in that it was written either for Dode or to Dode concerning Dode on behalf of the wisdom of approaching God's beloved son. And that's a really good idea since it is God's son, Dode, who has opened the door to life, has perfected us, has shown the way into God's family by being the firstborn son, and who is the returning king. So to be near Dode is to be near God. Now, as we come home to Yahweh's um, suggestions, his teachings, his guidance regarding the salvation of our souls and being part of the covenant family, the more we continue to focus on what Dode has said, the better. Because quite simply, the Bokor, the firstborn son of Yahweh, is the most cherished and capable individual in human history. He is the Masayach, the Malak, the Ben, the Bokor, the Zeroah, the Yasha, the Ra'ah, and the Shemak. He is the Sion. He is the Gabor. He is Gabriel. He is Chesed. He is Gaal. He is Nabi. Okay, so that was a lot of terms. What does all of that mean? Well, Masayach means he's the Messiah. He was anointed on Yahweh's instructions 3 times. He is the Malek, which means he is our counselor and sovereign, our king. He is the Ben El, the Son of God. As Bokor, he is God's firstborn son. As the Zeroah, he is the sacrificial lamb. He is also the one who cultivates the seeds which he has sown to produce a productive harvest. As Yasha, he is our savior. As Ra'ah, he is our shepherd. Shemek indicates that Dode is the main branch off of the tree of lives. Sion presents Dode as the signs posted along the way from his home to God's. As the Gabor, he is the mightiest of men. As Gabriel, he is God's most capable and competent man. As the Chesed, he is not only beloved, but chosen. As Gaal, he is the kinsman redeemer. And as Nabi, he is God's favorite prophet. So, as such, and consistent with all that we have already considered in the 89th Mizmor, it is wholly appropriate for God to devote multiple psalms to him. This is the most important and beneficial relationship the world has ever known between God and man. So Dode is the antidote for Judaism, which denies that he has accomplished everything that he has accomplished to save Jews from themselves. He is proof that the rabbis are wrong in claiming that only they can interpret the Torah. The Mashiach and Son of God is also the antidote for Christianity, which purports that the Torah cannot save, while transferring everything said and accomplished by Dode to their mythical misnomer, Jesus. Yah's songwriter is also the cure for many other things, including dying here on this planet and never going beyond it. So here is the introduction to the 103rd Mizmor. This is concerning Dode. It's to the beloved of David and approaching Dode. It begins, my soul, my nephesh, my consciousness, the essential aspect of my persona, which can be observant and respond. You have chosen to appreciate and acclaim Barak. It is your desire to make certain that you have shown your appreciation, seeking to share the blessings and benefits of what can be derived from the association with Yahowah. Yahowah is God's one and only name as properly pronounced using the written instructions that we find in his Torah regarding his Haya existence, through and accompanied by his set-apart name. So this is Mizmor 103:1. If we were to cut it down, pare it down a bit to its essence, this is concerning Dowd, and it says of his soul, which is essential because Christianity wants to bury and decompose Dowd's body to rid themselves of the Messiah and Son of God, our Savior, so that they can attribute everything that was achieved by and acknowledged on behalf of Dowd to their mythical misnomer, Jesus. But I was one up on them, and that is that, well, Dowd had a body now twice. His first body served him well for 70 years, his second for 3.5 years, and was then the most effective tool to be wielded in the prosecution of Pesach, Passover, and then discarded. And he will have a third corporeal body. But all the time, the thing that matters is his soul. And that's really all that matters for any of us is our souls. It's all that we can take to the next life. Our bodies are a handicap beyond this one. So my soul, he says, this is the ability to be observant, our consciousness. You have chosen to appreciate and acclaim. This is Barak. You have acknowledged, willing to uplift. And he says this on behalf of Yahowah. And when we read something like this, particularly when we hear that Dowd says, along with all that is within me, through and accompanied by his set-apart name. What we realize is that Dowd recognized that very few things are as important as knowing and using Yahweh's name. And in association with Yahowah, Dowd's soul has served not only Yahweh well, but his people well, all mankind well, over these past 3,000 years. And he is only valuable because Yahweh chose to work through him and use his soul to achieve these wonderful accomplishments. So Dowd, who is better known for being a determined fighter and passionate lover, he is the man who obviously united and enriched Israel and was her greatest king and defender. He was obviously very intellectual and quite emotional. He could wield swords and words with equal aplomb. He was typically courageous, but he could be cowardly too. He was right about God, but often wrong about men. His spectrum is seen through the words which shape his initial life, along with that of his people. He is Yisrael. He is how God sees the best in us and how he interacts to achieve the most through us. Dowd and his nefesh soul matter enormously to us and make it possible for us to approach God. Our soul represents the essence, of course, of who we are as well. It is the operating system within our lives. It is the reservoir of all that we are in terms of our attributes and our memories, our experiences are all held together along with our yearnings and our place. And the covenant family really are all conveyed through our soul. Our nephesh is like Yahweh's in the sense that it is the conveyor of his personality. And of course, Dod's is the most important nephesh consciousness of all, because his provided him, like ours provides us, with the opportunity to be observant and responsive. It is the thing that differentiates us from plants, all animals from plants. And while this was true for Dode as it is for us, there is a monumental distinction, and that is because Yahweh was able to use Dode's nephesh, his soul, as a living probe for him to experience and fulfill Pesach, Matzah, and Bakorim. Prior to and during the most of the time he was fulfilling Chag Matzah in 33 CE, the body that his soul occupied went from nondescript to dispensable and then to non-existent. So all that mattered was Dode's soul, and that it was redeployed to serve his people at this time and in this manner. So upon his upcoming arrival in 2033 to fulfill Kippurim and then serve as the king of Sukkah, Dode's soul will reside within a spiritual being. That isn't to say that he won't have a physical body, but that his physicality will be at his discretion. And he will be able to transform some of his spiritual energy into a diminished material form whenever it benefits him to have a body. Yahweh says that when Dode returns with him, he will be as brilliant as the sun. So you can't do that in a physical form. For the better part of 22 years, 23 years now, this was the aspect of the Mikre fulfillment that I missed. Although I was on the right track, I knew that the only way that Passover and Matzah could be fulfilled were by deploying a nephesh as a probe so that it could be used sort of like an avatar. Dode's soul was projected into a physical being for him to enter our space and time and fulfill Passover, and then removed as he went on in a much different realm to fulfill Matzah, and then different again as he returned to Shamayim during the fulfillment of Bakurim. Now, the difference here is that previously I thought that Yahweh was projecting his own soul to accomplish these things. And then you realize that really that's very awkward, because Yahweh can't allow men to kill him, kill even a physical manifestation of him. That's really ridiculous when you consider the capabilities of God to sit there and allow humans to beat him and then to torment him through persecution. That just isn't going to happen. It's not realistic. And then for Yahweh to go, even with his nephesh soul, to this place of separation from Yahweh, which would be Sheol, to carry our guilt, that doesn't work either, because the very purpose is to remove our guilt so that we can be in Yahweh's presence, so our guilt can't be associated with Yahweh, and it can't go to the place of separation from Yahweh. And the idea of Bakurim being firstborn children, Yahweh can't be both father and son and conceive himself. So that doesn't work either, but it all works beautifully once we recognize that it was Dode's soul that fulfilled all three, and that Yahweh just facilitated the process that his son would use. And that was the biggest transformation, really, in my understanding, after some 21 or 22 years of perceiving it one way, and then the light went on, and I continued to study these Mizmor from Dode, and it became clear to me, and now certain, that Dode volunteered to do these things, and it was just as he is saying here, his nephesh soul, that was used to make them possible. So clearly, we have learned and to know. The only way that all of the prophetic testimony fits is if the soul serving to fulfill Chag Matzah was Dod's. His name and his titles are not only cited within every such prophecy, but no one else is ever mentioned. Dod was not only Yahweh's firstborn and thus the proper fit for Bakurim, he had ample motivation. He needed really the added respect that being the Passover lamb engendered, as much as his people and his father needed him to serve them in this manner. It's tough leading Jews, and he's being assigned the responsibility for all eternity. So I was correct up to a point, but it was obvious that Chag Matzah was fulfilled by the deployment of a nephesh soul, and now we know whose. This association of Dod's soul and Yahweh's spirit became the most beneficial and rewarding collaboration in human history. And it is not over. Phases 1 and 2 are in the books, foretold, endured, and fulfilled, while his third coming remains a decade away at the time of this Yahowah blog presentation in 2025. Well, it remains 8.5 years away, to be more exact. The Messiah has affirmed that what we have come to realize that this was his choice and his decision. And as much as this was in Dod's interest and in the interest of the covenant family, obviously, because he opened the door to life, perfected us so we could enter Yah's presence, and then signed our adoption papers for us to enter Shamaim and made the enrichment and empowerment of Shabuah, this upcoming harvest, possible, such that there will be a marvelous celebration of Kippurim when he returns, particularly following the sacrifice of the Adam of Parah, his herald's body on Towrah, to enable this so that we can all enjoy camping out together with our King beginning on Sukkah. So clearly it was in everyone's interest, the covenant families, Dod's, and also in Yahweh's, because he wants a family. Most of all, it's his soul recognized that he would be doing something wonderful, truly amazing for everyone, and that he would earn our respect for it. And even beyond that, it's just exceedingly positive, reinforcing to acknowledge that Dod has served as our Savior. Further, nothing Dod has accomplished or will do would have amounted to, well, a hill of beans, if not accomplished in association with Yahweh, which is why he said so in the opening line of the 103rd Mizmor. While Dod's name is great among men, God's name is infinitely greater, even if it is not known currently by many men. There are very few things, and perhaps nothing, that Yahweh values more than us knowing and using his name and then recognizing what he and his son have accomplished for us. And nothing aggravates him more than modifying or nullifying his name, which is something that Dod has never done, but religious men have, well, done a terrible job of this, erasing Yahweh's name from his testimony and from their lives. The 103rd Mizmor continues, my soul, my nephesh, my consciousness, your desire is to commend and adore, being thankful for the benefit of sharing the blessings of this, and blessings is Barak. You have chosen to appreciate and acclaim while he extols and uplifts. This is written in the Peel imperfect second person feminine singular, where the nephesh has chosen to engage Yahweh such that her blessings are reciprocated. And this shift from masculine to singular, or masculine to feminine here, is important because our nefesh soul is a feminine noun in Hebrew. So in this case, it is Dod's soul specifically that Yahweh is choosing to appreciate. And it says, in association with Yahweh. You will never overlook, ignore, or forget. This is Wa'al Shakak. You will never be unmindful of or fail to properly respond to, be remiss in mentioning, or ever forget. Call imperfect, jusive, second person, feminine, singular, any of his accomplishments and resulting benefits that he has achieved and that he has shown. Mizmor, lyrics to be sung, Psalm 102. So while Dod led the way, his experience with Yahweh should encourage the rest of us. The more devoted we are to serving like he did and to serving his Father, the more devoted his Father will be to serving us, which is, of course, highly desirable. The more we accomplish and the more we're rewarded. And with God, the benefits infinitely exceed our contributions. His plan offers the greatest return on investment in every agreement that has ever been cut. Dod contributed more than anyone else, and he is being compensated appropriately. Now, I'm not suggesting something as utterly inane as the Christian pick up your cross and follow me nonsense. There would be no benefit, no capacity, no motivation, no purpose for any of us to attempt a second fulfillment of Pesach or Matzah. But if we can serve to awaken those people such that they appreciate what he has accomplished, well, then we have served as Dod was suggesting and Yahweh intends. So Dod's association with Yahweh is multidimensional. It is intellectual and emotional, engaging and conversational, inspiring and pragmatic. It's enlightening and enriching. And in his first life, he was a brilliant and receptive student, studying under the perfect teacher. And everything he learned, he shared with us, never overlooking or admitting or omitting anything relative to his life with Yahweh. Therefore, we can benefit from Qowl Gemul Hu, everything he, Yahweh, has done and the kindness Yahweh has shown, all of his accomplishments and resulting benefits, all in the same manner enjoyed by Yahweh's most celebrated son, which is why this is being presented this way. When Yahweh works through someone like Dod, we can imagine ourselves in the same role, serving right alongside Dod, recognizing that what Yahweh has offered to Dod, he will offer to us. And that's the way Yahweh wants it to be. We should actually put ourselves into virtually every story that is being told so that we picture ourselves participating and benefiting as the stories develop. This is how the narrative that God has shared with us pertains to each of us and can envelop our lives such that we are also contributors. So Dod's commitment to sharing everything he learned from and achieved with God over his lifetime in the center of Yah's universe makes him, uniquely important to God and to us. When we read and respond to his testimony on behalf of Yahweh, we are rewarded. When we share it, we spread the wealth. After letting us know exactly where his nefesh soul stood in relationship to Yahweh, Dod posted a series of rhetorical questions, which, were designed to encourage us to come to the same conclusions. Yahweh's collaboration with Dod's soul brought salvation to God's people. And to be consistent, there was only one way for Father and Son to achieve this result, which was through the Torah's presentation of the Bereth covenant and the Mikre invitations to gather together and meet. This remains true to this day, and that is what makes Dod's song so inspiring. This text reads, "Who?" It's from Ha, indicating either that a question is being asked or that the answer is being addressed, and the source identified as who forgives, removing culpability from consideration so as to pardon, salach, eliminates guilt, as written in the Qowl participle. All of your errant thinking, your wrongdoing, your erroneous statements, and your distorted notions, la kol ewon ata. Everything you have twisted and perverted with your warped thinking from all of your iniquity and depravity, the totality of your guilt and liability you have incurred from all of the pain that you've inflicted and damage that you have done by being misled or misleading others, along with the punishment due. And who promotes restoration? Ha Rapha, who heals the rift and mends what has been torn, curing and repairing for everything which incapacitates and sickens you, all of your diseases and your disabilities. Ms. Moore, lyrics to be sung, Psalm 103:3. Well, that was a lot to consider. And it goes all the way back to Dode saying, asking us who. And in this particular case, Ha was used to say, I am the answer, and the who is the subject of this psalm. And now it is indeed collaborative, which means that Yahweh and Dode work together. So the who can be both Yahweh and Dode, but the fact of the matter is Yahweh is very comfortable sharing credit and wants us to acknowledge what Dode has done in this regard. So who is Dode? Is the one who offers forgiveness, removing culpability from consideration so as to pardon us. This is a very complex concept that I've come to appreciate, which is that you actually don't need to be saved. This fixation that Christians have on salvation is really a non-starter. While, Dode is our Yasha, Yasha's primary meaning is to deliver, particularly from harm's way. And what he is delivering is us from our own guilt. Once our guilt, that which is removed, would make us otherwise culpable, then we appear perfect. If you appear before a judge and there is no evidence of any kind against you, the judge is simply going to dismiss you and doesn't even have to call you not guilty. You're obviously exonerated because there is nothing to be held against you. And that's what Dode did. He carried our guilt with him into Sheol to deposit it there, never to be seen again. So all Yahweh perceives in us is our perfection. And so that means that everything that we have previously done that is wrong, our errant thinking, our wrongdoing, our erroneous statements, our distorted perceptions and opinions, are all eliminated and removed from us. And the beauty of this too in Hebrew is that Yahweh reviews really our behavior, examines us, if you will, under the auspices of the imperfect conjugation. And what that is to say that we may have done all of these things. Most of us have. That's why Yahweh doesn't say that we must begin life perfect and remain perfect. He says, you know, I want you to walk away from the imperfecting uh, aspects of Babel, this confusing intermixing of truth and lies that is the nature of religion and politics. And once we walk away from these things and then walk to Him to be perfect, uh, then that is the solution that God is saying, that we walk away from that in our past that was imperfect, so that we can be perfect going forward. And there's nothing that really serves Yahweh any better than that. I was trying to toss something at my beloved Labrador Asher, who is sometimes wants to itch herself to into oblivion. She's finally walking away because she doesn't like me telling her not to do that. But that that is her guilt, and unfortunately, she's still living within the realm of the imperfect and hasn't given it up. But that is the beauty for the rest of us, the wonder of the rest of us, the joy for the rest of us is that God knows that most of us were raised in a culture where it is likely that we were at one time either religious or political, or militant, or patriotic, or conspiratorial, or any of those kinds of things. And He is not saying that you can't become part of His family or nor perfected if you've started off life this way. What He is saying instead is that walk away from those things and allow Him and His Son to perfect you, to remove your guilt, and then we are golden. We have a perfect record before God. So all we have to do is stop what we have previously done in terms of being religious and political and patriotic and militant, and all is um, not so much forgiven, but ignored, forgotten, unknown, if you will. And when Yah uses terms like he used here, particularly with Awon, he is speaking of broad-based guilt and wrongdoing, not personal uh, mistakes where uh, you or I may have told a fib, or we, um, uh, I don't know, whatever it is. You looked at Susie Q and thought she was cute. I mean, I don't know. Whatever it was that the religious have this tendency to try to slather all manner of guilt on people. Envy, is the deadly sin. No, no, it isn't. But um, when Yahweh uses terms like this, he's trying to share a big picture with us. This is collective guilt. This is the kind of guilt and wrongdoing that is manifest in things that are popular among people, which would be religion and politics, in particular. God doesn't have much interest in fussing over the little things. One of the things that gets the religious all up in a tizzy is homosexuality and promiscuity. And yet God never says anything about promiscuity. He rather thinks that sex was one of His uh, most enjoyable conceptions, and certainly wants us to use it. He says, be fruitful and multiply. Well, guess how that's done. And when you look at Yahweh's favorite people, like Dode is his absolute favorite. Dode had 18 lovers. And one of Dode's lovers, the person he probably loved more than anybody else, and that he had physical relationships with, is Jonathan, according to the text. And never once is there a harsh thing said about it. The two statements that are actually corrupted to create this myth that homosexuality is an abomination to God, actually speak more of what opposing armies had a propensity to do in victory, and they would um, impose themselves in ways that God found disgusting. And this is really what he was addressing. It says, don't don't do that. It's revolting. So there really aren't a lot of things that God is just up in arms against. But I can tell you, it's incest and pedophilia and rape, bestiality. Those things will definitely get his attention as being you're way too perverted to be part of my family. So this continues, and who promotes restoration. So Dode is the soul who promotes restoration because not only is our souls perfected by what he did on Matzah, where he carried our guilt away and deposited it in Sheol, never to be seen again, but Dode is the living embodiment of the day of restoration or of reconciliation, and that he is returning on Yom Kippurim, and then he will anoint the mercy seat with the Ark of the Covenant, which provides access to God for all of his family. So Dode is the living embodiment of our restoration in our relationship with Yahowah. For everything which incapacitates and every sickness. So the Torah is the opposite of what is claimed in Christianity. Paul, in trying to condemn the Torah, would have you believe that if you've violated any aspect of the Torah, then you're guilty of violating the entire Torah. There's no place that makes that kind of a statement or inference. The Torah's purpose is to liberate us from our guilt, not to impugn us with the guilt. It is the way to resolve guilt. It is not the way to incur guilt. And in this case, what Dode is saying, it doesn't matter really what your guilt may be derived from. If you are a beneficiary of what he is offering and he and his father have achieved, that all ailments, including the worst of them, which would be religious corruptions, are expunged from us. If it were not to reinforce the collaboration between Yahowah and Dode's nefesh, soul, and our restoration, why do you suppose it was introduced this way? No matter the extent we credit our father over his son, Ruach and Nefesh worked together to achieve this result. And it is as it should be. The Father wants to regale us so that we appreciate his son's contribution, while his son wants to thank his father for the opportunity and result. They both appreciate one another's contributions. Now, that time I did get Asher's attention. Well, it is true that only Yahowah can prolong our mortality and can perfect us. Yahowah never works alone. And even he didn't do this by himself. Yes, he can wipe the slate slathered with our errant musing and mumblings clean, but only after we stop blabbering Babel and then accept his antidote for the plague of religion. This necessitates capitalizing upon what God achieved by deploying Dode's nefesh to serve as the Pisakael and then to carry our errant ways and incapacitating infirmities to Sheol, thereby removing them from us. God has a plan, and we are encouraged to capitalize upon it. If we do, he is bound by his honor to facilitate his promise. Now, regrettably, although it was a very long time ago, and well, we've learned from prior mistakes, I was once religious. I was also political, patriotic, and pro-military. This was a very, very long time ago. I bet the last time I was any of these things was now, 40 years ago. I've had 40 years of my life separated from them. But I still recall these times and the people I met along the way and things I said and did and shared, and they do serve as a reservoir of understanding that enable me to effectively criticize religion and politics. We're dealing with the consequence of America's proxy war against Russia, and I have the benefit of knowing some of the culprits personally. Henry Kissinger introduced me to John McCain. Henry Kissinger was my friend. I got to know John McCain quite well while he was running for president against George Bush, who I also knew quite well. And it is by knowing these people and then evaluating what they have said and done before and after our meetings that I'm really in a privileged position to be able to share insights that I wouldn't otherwise have known. And so there is credibility that actually comes from having been part of something and left it. So when I criticize Christianity, I do so as one who was the youngest ruling elder in the history of the Presbyterian Church at the time, as someone who was an evangelist who led Bible studies, and as someone who was a student of the religion. And now that I know God's position against it, I'm in a position to be more effective in my criticisms. Um, Now, the same is not true with Islam, although I do have the unique distinction of being probably the only American that was able to meet directly with Hamas, Hezbollah, Islamic Jihad, and Al Qaeda at the time, and interview them, find out why they were so eager to kill Americans and Jews, and then to verify what they had to say. Um, so the very fact I was in that kind of meeting lends additional credibility to this mission. The very fact that I'm the only person who has written so extensively and done so many radio shows against Islam in my name, the very fact that I've survived it after having received thousands of death threats is also um, adds to the credibility. So, yes, I was once religious, but I have grown a great deal from that point. And at the time that Yahweh approached me on Towrah in 2001, and he introduced himself, I had distanced myself from religion, having come to realize that there were too many issues within Christianity that proved that it was untrue. So, as we continue to consider what father and son have accomplished together so that we could have our religious and political, militaristic, conspiratorial past expunged from us, and recognize that this was done for the benefit of the entire covenant family so that we are seen as perfect in God's eyes. There's no longer any consideration of prior guilt. As errant as our ways may have been in our past, they have no bearing or influence on our future. Our relationship with our Father and His Son are restored. The contagious and crippling effects of religion and politics are removed, and we are healed in the sense that the rift between us and God is mended. And uh, I claim the same result to God's people. Jews are exceedingly political, and they are have a propensity to be religious and have been political and religious going all the way back to the time of even before Dode and Shaul. Goes all the way back really to the time of the Exodus, where they continued to want to express their views religiously and politically. So even having grown up in that culture and having been slathered with the inappropriate nature of Israeli politics and Judaism, the moment you disassociate from those things and begin to embrace what God is offering, um, that burden, guilt is removed from you. So this continues, who, indicating either that a question is being asked or that the answer is being addressed and the source is being identified as who, is the kinsman redeemer who delivers your life, the family member paying the price for you to live. Qowl che ata is the related individual who facilitates your very existence and your ability to remain alive, ransoming your life and buying you back from unacceptable and defiling situations. Oh, what a powerful concept. From the dungeonous slime pit of corruption. Who, we're being asked, envelops and crowns you in loyal love, steadfast devotion, and unfailing kindness, in addition to compassion and mercy. Mizmor, lyrics to be sung, Psalm 103:4. Wow. Well, this would clear up the question entirely for anyone who is open-minded. There is only one kinsman redeemer in Israel, and that is David. He is a Yahud. He is the most Yahud of all. Yahud means beloved of Yah, by the way. In fact, it's apparent to me that Yahud incorporates Yahweh's name and Dod's name. Yahud, meaning beloved of Yah, just as Dod means beloved. And so he is the kinsman redeemer. He's the one who delivers, paying the price, such that we might live, opening the doorway to life on Pesach. And he is the one who has also removed us from that dungeonous pit of corruption, of Sheol. There is no reason for us to go there because he has been there in our stead. He's the one that carried our guilt there, never to be seen again. Who envelops you and crowns you? Well, kings can crown, that is for sure. And loyal love, steadfast devotion, and unfailing kindness, as well as genuine mercy. Now, normally you would say, well, it would be Yahweh that does these things. And Yahweh would say, no, I did these things through Dod. So you want to receive them, you'll receive them by way of what my son accomplished on your behalf. And this is one of the really marvelous things about God. He is so brilliant and so comfortable with himself that he realizes that he can accomplish a great deal more when he shares the credit with those who have performed well. And so, yes, God could take all the credit, but he chooses to take as little as possible and to share as much as possible. So, yes, you could read this as the who that is doing these things, that is providing this mercy and compassion, is God, but only up to a point, because God's not our kinsman, and therefore God is not our redeemer. Our redeemer is Dod. And so, since this is speaking of the same who, it means that Yahweh is encouraging Dod to take credit for providing this marvelous favor to us, this act of great kindness and compassion, being so merciful as to open the doorway for otherwise deadbeats and for carrying the guilt away of those who have earned it, and yet doing so freely, asking nothing in return from us. It is exactly as Dod is accepting credit and should accept credit. So the one and only Qowl, kinsman redeemer, is David. It is a realization his people have either ignored or denied for the past 2,000 years, 3,000 years since he wrote these words, 2,000 years since he made them such that he honored his promise, made them undeniable. And yet, denying this is the impetus of Judaism. The Qowl, by the simple fact that he is kin, part of the same family, is a man, by the way, and therefore not God, and therefore this can't be speaking of the mythical misnomer of Jesus, who is perceived to be a god. Oh, this is the kin of the people who provided salvation. A man. A Qowl is a man, and not just any man, but a man that is part of your extended family. And so while Yahweh made it possible for Dowd to ransom his people, the Son paid the price to free the covenant family from Sheol, having gone there in our stead. Everyone who enjoys prolonged life in the Bereth is beholden to our Qowl, our kinsman redeemer, for having made all of the sacrifice necessary to provide it. Now, I understand that as obvious as Father and Son have stated all of this, and that they work together to provide the benefits of the Bereth through the Moedim. There are so many errant claims that have been thrown in our faces that it, of course, was easy to overlook these declarations. The fact that Christianity piled so much religious rubbish right on top of the truth by counterfeiting everything that Yahweh had to say about Dowd, such that Dowd became essentially invisible behind all of the counterfeit and all of the churches and all of the New Testament and all of the proclamations and all of the people, particularly those that were subjugating and persecuting God's people, that it became almost impossible for Yehudim to accept and relate to the fact that there really was a kinsman redeemer, actually was a Messiah, the Son of God, and that he returned in year 33 CE to serve us in this way, because he was robbed of every dignity and depiction. But this is where rabbis played such a heinous role. They not only didn't recognize everything that was said about Dowd throughout the prophets and in the Mizmor, they foisted a false Messiah um, against that lie, leading Jews even further astray. You know, how is it even possible with all that has been said in these Mizmor, in the prophets about what Dowd would achieve, when he would achieve it, why, how, where, that those who were schooled in these texts didn't see it, and yet Yahweh managed to inspire a goy to recognize it all and to convey it with considerable evidence and passion. And yet I've been able to affirm what hundreds of thousands of them have missed, especially when the answer is Mashiach, and the circumstances of our salvation are so clearly presented, voluminously answered. This question shouldn't have been asked. Well, I understand why Dowd asked it, because no one knew the answer for 3,000 years, but the answer was so obvious. Dowd writes in the 22nd Mizmor, I did this. He writes in the 88th Mizmor, I did this. God writes in the 89th Mizmor, Dowd did this. Yashayah throughout says, yep, it was Dowd. He's the one who did this. These Psalms all say the same thing. Yep, I volunteered. I'm the one who did this. Befuddling. How you could claim to be Torah observant and miss the most obvious and profoundly important truth conveyed throughout God's teaching. Since this is the only place, the text of these books in Yada Yah, the Yahowah blog, where this confusion that has been piled on top of the truth, this rubbish has been lifted up and tossed away so that we now can look precisely and see and appreciate what Dode has done. I'm here to tell you, it's you're running out of time. I've done all that I can do. Yahweh has done all he can do. Dode has done all he can do. The prophets have said everything that needs to be said. It's just now whether or not, Israel, you're open to the truth. Are you going to continue to bang your head against that western wall of stone that was laid by an anti-Semite? Or are you going to look above that wall to the Temple Mount and realize that you owe it to your God to remove those two ugly Islamic scars and return home to Him, to recognize what Dode did in making that Temple Mount available to you and making what was offered there accessible to you? Well, it isn't as definitive as having the aforementioned nephesh of Dode ransom his people as their kinsman redeemer. Aren't kings the one who determines who is crowned next? And as a curiosity, isn't it Dode who was the king that can bequeath his crown to those who follow him, to those who acknowledge what he has done, to those who serve along with him? And didn't this Mizmor say that very clearly? You know, when Pesach and Matzah lead to Bokurim as a result of the Bokor, we are adopted into the covenant family. As a result, we become royalty, replete with crowns. I'm Yada Yahowah. Man, what a tremendous honor. I wrote these books under this title because I wanted people to know Yahweh. And then I realized, because I worked under the pseudonym Yada for all of these years, and Yahweh likes to use it as well, in reference to what we have done together, that I am Yahweh, or Yada ben Yahweh, or for short, just Yada Yahweh. It's Dode ben Yahweh. And that makes us royalty. He's the creator of the universe. He's the king of creation. So we all will have a crown of life. And beyond the royal trappings, our sovereign surrounds us in love, enveloping us in his light, encompassing us with his set apart nature, where he is the chosen one of Yahweh, and we can choose our God in return by choosing to acknowledge all that his Son has achieved. But it is but a shadow among the brilliance of being conveyed. But this is prophetic, because Dode's soul was actually placed in the lightless dungeon during unyeasted bread, which was mentioned in that lyric, to free us from Sheol. And he did so by carrying and then depositing our guilt within this black hole, never to be seen or found again, making us appear perfect before God. As a result, I mean, that gives us just such confidence, I think, is the right term. Freedom, totally, to be emancipated from everything you ever have or will do wrong, and knowing that you have this opportunity to approach Yahweh and to celebrate life in his presence, knowing that there isn't a single thing that you've ever done that is less than perfect or desirable, that God can know about or does know about, will ever learn about. I mean, it's just the most liberating and empowering, confidence building outcome that is imaginable. And all was accomplished through chag matzah, such that our relationship with Yahweh, with Father and Son, could be abundantly satisfying. This continues. Who? Indicating either that this question is being asked or we're being given the answer of the real source who abundantly satisfies. Shabat provides overwhelming contentment and satisfaction, fulfilling the vow to enrich, and empower with that which is beneficial and good, highly desirable for you, beautiful, and its adornment. Baha Tob Adiath, with adornment, which removes unsightliness so that you are pleasing and acceptable. She, on her own initiative, restores and renews Kadash. She, on her own recognizance, makes an independent decision, rehabilitates and reconciles such that the relationship is affirmed. This is in the Hitpael, imperfect, third person, feminine singular, Hitpael, the unique stem, and that it indicates that the action of the verb, and in the imperfect, which is ongoing, is independent of outside influences. And the statement then continues, becoming similar to the soaring eagle of your youth. Mizmor lyrics to be sung, Psalm 103:5. So after we are afforded here, I guess we're afforded really a rather interesting choice regarding the identity of the feminine restoring influence, but not regarding the object of her restoration. So even if unnoticed by everyone, you throughout this Mizmor has been feminine, addressing our souls and the soul who worked on our behalf. This time, redemption is not from slavery, nor is the healing from a disease which affects the body. It is our souls which are being ransomed and restored. And you might say, well, by whom? Since it says she and Dode's a dude. Well, no. I made it really clear. God did, and I did. It's Dode's nefesh that has done this. That's why Peter and Paul, when they tried to bury Dode's body so that they could steal everything from him in a tremendous and terrible act of identity theft, they wanted his body dead and buried and in the grave and corrupting. But Dode's body is meaningless. This song and so many others like it focus on Dode's soul, his nefesh. And God's able, through feminine and masculine words, not to convey a sense of femininity. There's nothing feminine really about the soul, just as I'm not sure there's much feminine even associated with the Ruach, because almost every aspect of the Ruach's deployment is masculine and nature, and Yahweh only refers to himself in the masculine form as he and him, as a father, never a mother. Nefesh is a feminine verb, and well, that really doesn't mean that Dode had a girly side. What it means is that Yahweh can take an aspect of himself or of us and write about it in such a way that when he applies verbs and discussions regarding what is accomplished with it, we know what it is. And in this case, it is Dode's Nefesh Soul. Dode's Nefesh Soul is more important than any other aspect of Dode. His messiahship, his sonship, his kingship, his body, nothing matters among all of those things, even collectively, to the extent of even a fraction of of 1% as much as his soul. And so it was his soul that resided within the disposable Bashar body that fulfilled Pesach. But it was the soul of the man that mattered in that sacrifice. And it was Dod's soul that performed on matzah to carry our guilt away. And it was Dod's soul that, as the Bakor, became the firstborn son of Yahowah in Shamaim. And for the rabbis say that God can't have a son because, well, he's spirit and, a man's a man and God can't be corporeal, so God can't have a son. You're just not thinking it through. It's Dod's nefesh that is the firstborn on firstborn children. And the nefesh is far more akin to spirit than it is to matter. Oh, in science, for example, and trying to understand the origins of life, scientists are reasonably adept at the chemistry of the whole thing. They've gotten more and more adept at the language of it through DNA. They aren't so adept at the evolution of it because, well, things don't evolve positively; they devolve with gene mutations. But the one thing that they don't even make an attempt of, there is no study of any kind in the scientific community, is what is a soul. What is that essence of life, that spark of light that animates the birth and the inception of all life, that gives animals this ability to observe and respond to their environment that plants do not have, which are still forms of life, and that when it goes, the animal is dead. And yet it has no weight. It can't be measured. No one's ever seen one. We can't calculate its essence. The soul is such a unique construct of God, and it is very much like spirit in the sense of Yahweh has made it clear that I have upwards of 1,000 malach that protect me from harm's way and protect my home. It's part of the responsibility that God has of me serving him in this way. And yet I've never seen one. I've never touched one. I can't measure them. I hear from God directly from time to time, and I learn from him and hear him speak through his words every day. But as for the malach, I can't see them or touch them. And I've never even asked to be able to do so. I can't see my soul. I just know that it's there. But this answers really the entire question here. The who that is the she here is Dod's nefesh soul, and that is the essence of the man. And it is gives God the ability to have his beloved live ongoing lives. A first life in a body, a second life that he projected into a different body, bringing the same soul back, and a third life that he will project when he returns. Exact same soul. The soul of Dod is immortal. And so this is really the most profound truth through all of this, is that it is Dod's soul that is the operative agent in all of our redemption and all of our reconciliation. In all of these acts, these words are funneled through Dod's soul. These activities are performed by way of Dod's souls. It's truly an exceedingly important thing for us to recognize. So as this continues, Yahowah, this is the proper pronunciation again of the name of our Elohah God as directed through his Torah teaching regarding his Haya existence and our shalom, reconciliation, does what is right, engaging honestly and fairly, Asha Sadak, acts appropriately, honorably, and correctly, working justly, producing beneficially, showing good judgment and executing justice, wa mishvat, appropriately resolving disputes while making informed and rational decisions on behalf of all who are unjustly exploited, defrauded, and deceived. Qowl, Ashak. Everyone egregiously mistreated, treacherously extorted, cheated, disadvantaged, ill-treated, wronged, and oppressed. Mizmor lyrics to be sung, Psalm 103:6. Well, this is to say that Yahweh engaged to support his son's fulfillment of Chag Matzah in a manner which was predictable because he is, of course, trustworthy and dependable. This means that the Moed and the Moedim, as fulfilled by Dod's Nefesh, are therefore supported by Yahweh in a manner that is fair and appropriate in resolving our guilt. And while that's good news for us, at least for those who have perceived what God is offering and have capitalized on it all, there is also a suggestion here that that there are many people who have been deceived and defrauded, indeed exploited under the oppressiveness and controlling influence of religion and of political schemes, and those who have made merchandise of men and held them accountable. And what this means also is that if you are among those who have exploited what Dode represents and in an oppressive and controlling way so as to rob the Messiah and Son of God of his due, then God's got your number. It means if you've been harassed by one of these institutions, because Christianity oppressed God's people for a very long time, and Judaism has probably been the harder on Jews than any other religion, denying Jews more than anyone else. God's going to hold them accountable, and there will be many who will be redeemed from this situation, who will be removed from their clutches. So Yahweh did not say that he was going to save everyone who has been defrauded, exploited, or oppressed, only that he would show good judgment and executing justice and be fair to these people. And that means that he will hold those who mistreated and extorted them politically or oppressed them economically, or who have defrauded them religiously, and he is going to hold the perpetrators accountable such that they don't go unpunished. Said another way, the souls of those victimized simply will fade away, while the perpetrators will be sent away. They will endure an eternity in Sheol. And by exacting retribution upon those who have harmed his people, is just being just and fair, even correct and compassionate, providing a sense of closure and comfort for those whose souls will fade away. They deserve justice, knowing that those who defrauded them, who misled them, who misused them, will be punished for their crimes. We know this, as did Dode, because we're Torah observant. It is the place through which we must all walk if our ambition is to know God. Dode, as one Ra'ah, shepherd, Nabi, prophet, and Zeroah, sacrificial lamb, said, and this will be our last statement for this program, and we'll pick up where we left off on our next. He made known, Yada, he revealed and acknowledged and made us aware such that we could become familiar with Yada, disclosing and encouraging understanding, the hiphil imperfect, such that there would be an understudy acting as does Dode in the imperfect on an ongoing basis or with ongoing implication. So he made known his ways, or Yada made known his ways. And this is suggesting that the ways of Moshe have now been made known to us through his interactions. We have studied the interactions with the children of Yisrael. This is Psalm 103:7. And when you study them, one of the first things that comes to mind is that God was enormously patient with his people, but also antagonized by them. It is truly heartbreaking and amazing how God intervened on behalf of his people and liberated them from what would have been a genocidal situation where they were persecuted and abused as slaves. And they didn't even get across the Red Sea before they were rebelling against him, saying they wanted to go back. And as Moshe went up Mount Jorb for the first time to receive the beginning insights of the Torah, they were right down there taking the gifts that they had left Mitzrayim with that were going to be used for the tabernacle and temple, and they turned them into religious icons and images and idols. No matter where they were ungrateful. They were complainers. They were embittered. They were rebellious. It's story after story. And there's almost none of those stories where the children of Israel were appreciative. And the worst of them is when they told God to shut up and go away. We don't want to hear from you again. And so when we study Yahweh's interactions with Moshe as did and his people, the children of Israel, as did Dode, boy, we come to Yada in the every sense of the word to appreciate what was revealed, to acknowledge what has been said. And it is in this light that I recognize how difficult a job I now have in trying to correct that attitude. It's an attitude that Jews have had for 3,450 years, and yet I've got to break through. I've got to somehow get their attention and I don't know if it slaps some sense into them or beg for their indulgence, whatever it may be. But Israel has been recalcitrant. They've been rebellious. They've been hard-headed. They've been, well, the opposite of what God intended. Yahweh chose them, and I'm not sure there's a point where they ever chose God. They've done everything they could to annoy him, removing him from their lives, erasing his name, telling him to go up and shut up and go away, and then continue to annoy him by being religious and political when he asked them to instead engage in the relationship that he had conceived on their behalf. And now, with just 8.5 years left before Dode returns, our kinsman redeemer, it's my job to get Israel's attention, to change their mind, to reintroduce them to Yahweh, to refamiliarize them with Dode, David, their kinsman redeemer, to call them back home. And quite frankly, it's a tough job. And it's a job that I really should not have been asked to do. It's a job that never should have been required. And it's a job that really, if it were needed, it should have fallen to another kinsman. But unfortunately, Israel, you became so bad there wasn't a single one of you willing to listen. and God had to go outside the family to get the family's attention. So we're going to pause and we're going to think about the implications of that. And we'll be back with you on the next episode of the YAHOWAH blog. I am Yada, your host, Craig Winn.